The boutique smelled of polished leather, jasmine perfume, and something else. Judgment. A hush swept through the room the moment she stepped inside. Not because of the dress she wore or the confidence in her stride, but because of the color of her skin. She didn't notice at first. Her eyes were drawn to the mannequins dressed in sleek silk gowns, each tagged with prices that made most people blink twice. She wasn't there to buy, at least not today. She was there to look, to feel the fabric, to test the atmosphere. It was part of her plan. But to the clerk behind the counter, none of that mattered. The woman's gaze lingered on her like a scanner, head to toe, toe to head. And then came the whisper. A whisper sharp enough to cut the silence. "Watch her." Another clerk stiffened, their eyes darting nervously. Customers pretended not to notice, but you could feel the energy shift, like static before a storm. She picked up a dress. Not just any dress. A flowing, deep crimson evening gown with hand-sewn beading. Her fingers traced the fabric. She lifted it slightly, inspecting the craftsmanship. That's when the voice rang out. Accusatory. Cold. Public. "Excuse me. Put that down. You're not allowed to handle merchandise without assistance." The room froze. Her hand trembled slightly, but she forced a calm smile. "I'm just looking," she replied softly. But the clerk wasn't done. Her voice grew louder, sharper, designed for everyone to hear. "Looking or stealing?" The word echoed. Stealing. Shoppers gasped, phones tilted. A man near the entrance quietly pressed record, and just like that, she was no longer a customer. She was a suspect. The clerk stormed forward, heels clicking like gavel strikes. "Security!" she barked. "Call the police!" Gasps rippled across the boutique. Someone muttered, "Is she serious?" Another whispered, "I saw her pick it up." Her chest tightened. Her mind raced. She wanted to defend herself, to shout the truth. But deep down, she knew the truth didn't always matter. Not here. Not now. Not when the color of her skin had already written the story for her. Within minutes, the sirens wailed outside. Red and blue lights flashed against the boutique's glass walls, casting eerie colors across the mannequins. Officers stormed in, hands ready, eyes narrowed. "Ma'am, step away from the dress." She froze. Her fingers released the fabric, letting the gown fall back onto the rack like a wounded bird. The crowd circled closer, phones raised higher, and in that moment, humiliation swallowed her whole. One officer demanded ID. Another reached for her bag. Her pulse thundered. She could feel sweat trickling down her neck. She tried to speak, but her voice cracked. I didn't take anything." But the clerk, arms folded smugly, sneered. "That's what they all say." The words cut deeper than any blade. The officer tightened his grip on her wrist. "Ma'am, don't make this harder than it needs to be." Her heart sank. She glanced at the dress, still hanging untouched, proof of her innocence. But nobody was looking at the truth. They were looking at her, and yet behind the fear, behind the shame, a fire flickered, because this wasn't just another accusation. This wasn't just another headline. This was a test, and the clerk had no idea who she had just accused. No idea of the storm that was about to break. No idea that the woman was standing quietly in the center of the room, was holding all the power. What started as humiliation would soon turn into something else, something bigger, something unforgettable, and the boutique would never be the same again. The woman at the center of this storm was Naomi Carter. To the world in that moment, she was a suspect. To the clerk, she was a thief in the making. But to those who truly knew her, she was something else entirely. Naomi wasn't just another shopper wandering into a boutique on a random Thursday afternoon. She was a designer, a dreamer, a creator, and soon the world would know her as the visionary behind one of the most iconic fashion rebrands in a decade. But right now, Nobody in that boutique saw that. All they saw was a black woman touching a dress that someone had decided she didn't deserve to feel. Naomi's journey hadn't been an easy one. She grew up in Atlanta, raised by a single mother who stitched clothes for neighbors to keep the lights on. Naomi would sit beside her mother, tiny fingers playing with scraps of fabric, learning how seams told a story. Every stitch is a choice, her mother used to say, and every choice leaves a mark. Make sure yours matter. Those words stayed with her. They carried her through the fashion schools that looked at her portfolio with surprise, as if brilliance couldn't belong to her. They carried her through internships where her ideas were praised in whispers but credited to someone else in public. And they carried her through every moment she was underestimated, overlooked, or ignored. By 29, Naomi had carved her way into the industry. Her designs had caught the eye of a global luxury brand struggling to stay relevant. They were bold, modern, and unapologetically fresh. The company took a chance on her, naming her their new lead designer for an upcoming relaunch. But Naomi didn't just want to sketch dresses behind a desk. She wanted to change the entire experience, the way customers felt when they walked into a store, the way clerks treated people no matter their background. She wanted inclusion to be stitched into the fabric of fashion itself, and so, before the relaunch, she decided to go undercover, to visit boutiques like an ordinary customer, to test the atmosphere, the service, and the culture, to see if the brand's luxury truly meant luxury for everyone. This day, this boutique, was supposed to be one of those quiet tests, but instead, it had exploded into a spectacle. Now, let's step back into that boutique for a moment. On one side, Naomi. Calm on the surface, but inside, her pulse raced with fear and anger. On the other hand, Clara Whitmore, the clerk. Blonde bob cut, perfectly pressed blazer, eyes like cold steel. Clara wasn't new to retail. She'd been at this boutique for 6 years. She loved to say she could spot a shoplifter in seconds. But what she really meant was that she had already written people's stories the moment they walked through the door. And Naomi, in Clara's eyes, was a story she had written 1,000 times before. Behind Clara stood the audience, the customers who pretended not to be involved but leaned closer with every second. The ones who whispered, speculated, and judged. The ones who said nothing, but whose silence was louder than words. And just outside, waiting in the wings, were the police officers, men who arrived with hands already ready for cuffs. Not asking, not observing, just assuming. But Naomi wasn't alone in the bigger story of her life. Some people believed in her. Her mentor, Elena Ruiz, a retired designer who had once been pushed out of the industry for being too ethnic, had taught Naomi how to survive the politics of fashion. Her best friend, Marcus, a photographer who had documented every step of her journey, reminded her constantly, "Naomi, your story is bigger than the runway. You're designing for the people who've never been allowed to sit in the front row." And then there was the brand's CEO, a man who had staked his company's future on her designs. He knew she was testing the boutiques, but he didn't realize how harsh reality would hit her today. He didn't know a clerk would go this far, and he definitely didn't know this particular boutique's contract would hang by a thread after the dust settled. The injustice Naomi faced in that boutique wasn't new. It was a mirror of the moments she had lived her entire life. Moments like the time she entered a fabric store in college and was followed down every aisle. Moments like the internship meeting where she pitched a concept and the supervisor laughed. "Urban chic? You mean streetwear? Our clients don't want that." Moments like the fashion show where her invitation was double-checked while others walked straight in, indignities stacked like bricks. Minor sharp cuts that built a lifetime of scars. But Naomi had learned to carry those scars as armor. And on this day, in this boutique, that armor would be tested more than ever. As the officers tightened their grip on her wrist, Clara stood smugly nearby, arms folded, lips curled into a satisfied smile. To Clara, this was victory. Proof she had been right all along. To the crowd, it was a show. Some shook their heads in pity, others nodded in agreement. But nobody stopped it. Nobody stepped in. And that's what made Naomi's heart ache the most. Not just the accusation, not just the humiliation, but the silence of those who knew better. Still, deep inside, Naomi held on to one truth. They don't know who I am. They didn't know she was the future face of the brand. They didn't know the dress she had been accused of stealing was one of her own designs. They didn't know the power she held, the power that would soon turn this entire scene upside down. For now, the world saw Naomi Carter as a suspect, but soon they would see her in a different light. And when they did, Clara Whitmore's smirk would vanish faster than it had appeared. Because this story wasn't about a stolen dress. It was about stolen dignity. And the moment dignity finally fought back. Naomi didn't sleep that night. The memory of the boutique, a cruel film on loop, tormented Naomi's mind that night. The clerk's voice, the word stealing, the officer's grip on her wrist, the crowd of strangers who had raised their phones but not their voices. Humiliation clung to her like smoke, thick and suffocating. She sat at her kitchen table, staring at the crimson sketchbook that held her designs, the same crimson shade as the dress she had been accused of stealing. Her pen hovered over the page, but no lines came. And then her phone buzzed. It was Marcus. "Naomi, I saw the video." His voice cracked through the speaker. "It's already online. Over 20,000 views in 2 hours. People are divided. Some believe you, some believe her. It's brutal." Naomi closed her eyes. "So now I'm trending. For the wrong reasons." Marcus was quiet for a moment, then firm. "No. You're trending for the right reasons. The world needs to see how easily this happens, but you can't let them control the narrative. You have to flip it." Naomi sighed, her fingers tapping the sketchbook. "Flip it how? They see me as a thief. That's all they'll remember." "Unless," Marcus leaned in, his voice sharper now, "you remind them who you really are." Later that night, Naomi called her mentor, Elena Ruiz. The older woman's voice was calm, steady, like a compass in a storm. "Elena, I froze. I felt powerless. I've spent years preparing for this industry, and one accusation almost broke me." Elena's response was gentle but firm. "You didn't freeze, Naomi. You endured. You walked out of there without letting them destroy you. And now, you have something more powerful than their words." Naomi frowned. "What's that?" "Truth. And truth has weight. Use it like a weapon," Marcus advised, his voice filled with conviction. Those words stuck with her. The next morning, Naomi sat with Marcus at a small cafe downtown. They spread out newspapers, phones, and laptops, scanning reactions. The boutique had already issued a cold statement. "We take theft very seriously and reserve the right to protect our merchandise. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just corporate dismissal." Marcus slammed his fist on the table. "They're painting you as a criminal, Naomi. They think you'll stay quiet." Naomi leaned back, eyes narrowing. "What if I don't?" He blinked. "What do you mean? I mean," she lowered her voice, "what if I go public? Not just as the woman accused, but as who I really am." Marcus's eyes widened. "You'd reveal it now? Before the brand's official announcement?" Naomi hesitated. This was the risk. The company hadn't announced her yet. She was supposed to debut with a splash at Fashion Week. Revealing herself now could jeopardize the launch. But another thought burned brighter. "What's the point of being the lead designer?" she whispered. "If I stay silent while my own brand humiliates people like me." "If you choose to do this, Naomi, it won't just shake the boutique. It'll shake the entire brand," Marcus warned. Naomi met his gaze. "Good. Let it." For days, Naomi and Marcus worked in secret. Late nights bled into dawns. Coffee cups stacked high, laptops glowing in the dark. They gathered the video clips circulating online. They pieced together the timeline. The moment she entered, the accusation, the police arrival. Marcus slowed the footage frame by frame, highlighting how Naomi never once concealed the dress. "This is the receipt," he said, pointing to the paused video. "Undeniable." Naomi nodded. "But evidence isn't enough. People don't just need proof. They need a story." So she began to write. Her words poured out like fire, raw and unfiltered, each sentence a testament to the power of her voice. "I wasn't a thief. I was a designer testing the very culture I was hired to transform. And in that boutique, the culture failed. Every sentence was sharpened, every detail designed to pierce the silence." Elena reviewed the draft over the phone. "This isn't just a statement," she said. "It's a manifesto. But Naomi, are you ready for the backlash? They'll call you dramatic. They'll say you're making it about race." Naomi inhaled deeply. "Elena, it is about race. And if I don't say it, who will?" Meanwhile, whispers spread through the fashion industry. The video had reached executives, journalists, and influencers. Some dismissed it. Others leaned in, waiting to see if the woman in the video was really who they thought she was. The brand's CEO called Naomi privately. "Naomi," he said carefully, "I need to know your intentions. Are you going public? If you are, it changes everything." Naomi's silence stretched across the line. Finally, she spoke. "If I stay silent, then I'm complicit. This isn't just about me. It's about every person who walks into one of our stores and is told they don't belong. If we're relaunching, then we're relaunching with the truth." The CEO exhaled. "Then do it. And know this, whatever storm comes, I'll back you." Naomi's chest tightened with a mix of relief and fear. The storm was already gathering. Marcus set up his studio for the reveal. A plain backdrop, a single chair, one spotlight. Minimal, clean. "Let them focus on your words," he said. Naomi sat down, her hands folded, her heart pounding. For a moment, she thought of that boutique again, the smell of perfume, the clerk's smirk, the words stealing. Her pulse quickened, but she steadied herself. The camera light blinked red. Recording. Naomi looked straight ahead, her voice calm but fierce. "My name is Naomi Carter. I am the new lead designer for..." She named the brand. "And last week I was accused of stealing a dress that I, in fact, designed." Her words hit like a hammer. She didn't stop there. She recounted every detail. The stares, the whispers, the silence of those who stood by. And then, she turned it into a challenge. "If luxury is only for some, then it isn't luxury at all. I will not allow my work to live in spaces that humiliate customers based on race. So I am pulling this boutique's contract, effective immediately." Her eyes burned with resolve. "This isn't just my fight, it's ours, because dignity is not a privilege, it's a right." The recording ended. Marcus looked at her, stunned. "Naomi, this is going to explode." She swallowed hard. "Good. Let it burn." The plan was set. The video would go live at noon the next day, and with it, the storm would break. But Naomi had no idea just how far the waves would reach, because this wasn't just about one boutique anymore. It was about an entire industry forced to confront its reflection in a mirror Naomi had just shattered. The next day, the city awoke to flames, not literal flames, but digital ones. At the stroke of noon, Naomi's video, a catalyst for change, was unleashed into the digital realm. And within minutes, the internet caught it like dry tinder. On the wings of Twitter, Naomi's story soared like a bolt of lightning. Designer reveals she was accused of stealing her own dress. On Instagram, clips of her speech circulated, her face lit by that stark spotlight, her words sharp as glass. On TikTok, Teenagers remixed the moment she declared, "Dignity is not a privilege, it's a right." The world had found its anthem. T. The boutique, the clerk who had accused Naomi stood frozen behind the counter, her phone buzzing relentlessly. Messages poured in. "This you? So that's the designer you humiliated? Good luck finding a new job." Her hands trembled as she scrolled, her face pale. Meanwhile, her manager tried to call corporate, but the line was already clogged. Reporters demanding statements, influencers tagging the brand, customers threatening boycotts. The storm Naomi had predicted was here. Back at Naomi's apartment, Marcus refreshed the YouTube counter every few seconds. "Naomi, look! 500,000 views in under an hour." Naomi sat quietly, sipping tea, her heart thundering beneath the calm. Numbers didn't matter. Not really. What mattered was the silence breaking. And then, her phone rang. It was a news outlet. Then another. Then another. Requests for interviews, invitations to panels. Everyone wanted her voice. But Naomi declined them all. Her statement was enough. The video wasn't about chasing the spotlight. It was about shifting power. By evening, the boutique's name trended globally. Designer Justice. She designed it. Pull the contract. And then, the hammer fell. The brand's official account released a statement. Effective immediately, our partnership with boutique name has been terminated. Discrimination has no place in our stores. We stand fully with our new lead designer, Naomi Carter. Screenshots of the statement flooded every platform. The internet roared its approval, but not everyone was cheering. Some voices called Naomi an opportunist. Accusations flew. She set them up. Conspiracy threads sprouted overnight. This was just a marketing stunt for the brand. Naomi scrolled through them briefly, then set her phone down. The negativity stung, but it couldn't erase the truth. Marcus looked at her with concern. "You don't have to read that junk. You know what this is. You hit a nerve. That means you're making change." Naomi nodded slowly. "I knew the backlash would come. But Marcus," her voice softened, "I didn't expect to feel so exposed." Marcus reached across the table, his hand covering hers. "Exposed, yes, but not alone. Look at the comments, too. Look at how many people are saying, 'This happened to me.' You gave them a voice." Naomi inhaled deeply, grounding herself. He was right. This was bigger than her. The real confrontation came days later. The boutique owner requested a meeting. Against Marcus's protests, Naomi agreed. They met in a private office downtown. The boutique owner, a middle-aged man in an expensive suit, entered with a scowl. Behind him, the same clerk who had accused Naomi sat stiff, her eyes darting nervously. Naomi remained calm, her posture regal, as though the air itself bent differently around her now. The owner's voice was sharp. "You've destroyed my business. Do you know how many employees you've cost their jobs?" Naomi didn't flinch. "You destroyed your business the moment you allowed discrimination to be standard practice." His jaw tightened. "This could have been handled quietly." "You embarrassed us." Naomi's eyes blazed. "You embarrassed yourselves. All I did was hold up the mirror." The clerk finally spoke, her voice cracking. I didn't know who you were." Naomi turned to her, her tone steady but cutting. "You didn't need to know who I was. Respect shouldn't depend on status, on color, on recognition. Every customer deserves dignity, every single one." The room fell silent. Naomi rose, gathering her bag. "This isn't personal. It's systemic. And until people like you stop excusing it, the system won't change." She left them there, in their silence, in their shame. Outside, reporters had gathered. Cameras flashed, microphones shoved forward. "Naomi, do you feel vindicated? Was this all part of your brand strategy? Do you regret pulling the contract?" Naomi stopped at the steps, her voice carrying with quiet strength. I don't feel vindicated. I feel responsible. Because what happened to me happens every day to people who don't have the platform I have. I pulled that contract because my work cannot coexist with humiliation. Fashion should inspire, not degrade. The crowd erupted in questions, but Naomi walked forward, Marcus shielding her from the chaos. That night, the video reached 10 million views. And more than views, it sparked a movement. Other stories surfaced. Customers across the world sharing their own experiences of being followed, accused, doubted, dismissed. A global conversation was unfolding, with Naomi's name at its center, connecting people from all corners of the world in a shared struggle and a shared hope for change. Elena called her late that night. Naomi, do you realize what you've done? You've turned your pain into power. You've forced an industry to face itself. Naomi sat by the window, the city lights flickering below. Her voice was soft, almost disbelieving. I just told the truth, Elena. Naomi's voice was soft, almost disbelieving. But in her truth, she had found a power that was reshaping an industry. Elena smiled through the phone. Sometimes, that's all it takes to start a revolution. The climax had passed. The climax had passed, but its echo was only beginning. Naomi's journey wasn't just about one dress anymore. It was about rewriting the rules of belonging, stitch by stitch, voice by voice. And the world was watching, eagerly, awaiting the next chapter of this inspiring story. Naomi's journey wasn't just about one dress anymore. It was about rewriting the rules of belonging, stitch by stitch, voice by voice, and the world was watching. The boutique never recovered the same way. Within hours of Naomi's video going viral, the luxury brand's decision to terminate the contract hit the boutique hard. Suppliers canceled orders, clients canceled appointments. The reputation they had, built over the years, crumbled in a single day. Clara Whitmore, the clerk who had accused Naomi, was put on administrative leave pending an internal investigation. Her confident smirk, the one that had fueled so much humiliation, was gone. She had underestimated the very person she had tried to shame. Customers who had once walked in without thought now whispered, some with shame, some with curiosity. And the boutique owner? He faced a public reckoning. News outlets questioned not just his policies but his leadership. Yet, he stood firm, determined to learn from this experience and make his boutique a beacon of inclusivity. The story became a cautionary tale across fashion blogs, industry circles, and social media platforms. Still, it also became a story of resilience and growth. Meanwhile, Naomi's life had changed in ways she hadn't fully anticipated. Invitations to fashion panels, podcasts, and interviews poured in. Her designs were suddenly not just admired, they were symbolic. They represented fairness, inclusion, and the power of using one's platform for justice. Yet Naomi stayed grounded. She didn't chase the spotlight for fame or followers. Her victory wasn't in the clicks or trending hashtags. It was the truth being seen and acknowledged. Marcus, ever her silent anchor, reminded her of that truth every day. Naomi, he said one evening, you didn't just fight for yourself. You fought for anyone who's ever been dismissed because of who they are. That's bigger than a single dress or a single boutique. Naomi nodded, a quiet smile breaking through. Her chest felt lighter than it had in days, weeks, months. For the first time in a long while, she didn't carry the weight of invisible judgment. The fashion brand officially announced Naomi as the lead designer for their relaunch, highlighting her vision not just for creativity, but for ethical inclusivity. Every boutique across the chain was instructed to implement new training, diversity standards, and accountability measures. The message was clear. Discrimination would not be tolerated, no matter where it came from. The boutique, once a place of exclusion, was now a symbol of inclusivity and change. The message was clear. Discrimination would not be tolerated no matter where it came from. For Naomi, the most profound impact wasn't the accolades. It was the change she inspired in others. Customers who had seen the video shared their own stories. Stories that had gone unheard for years suddenly found a voice. People were speaking up, calling out bias, supporting fairness. And in that, Naomi found purpose deeper than any runway, deeper than any award. Clara Whitmore, once so certain of her authority, learned the hard way that arrogance and prejudice have consequences. She had humiliated a woman without knowing who she truly was, and the public watched every misstep unfold. It was a cautionary tale for employees everywhere. Judgment without empathy could cost far more than a job. Naomi herself returned to her sketches, her fingers tracing patterns on silk and cotton. The crimson gown, the one that had sparked the incident, hung in her studio as a reminder, not of shame, but of victory. Every bead, every stitch, now told a story not just of design, but of resilience. And the city watched, inspired. For the first time, many understood dignity can be reclaimed, power can be shifted, and one voice, used wisely, can start a movement. The boutique had tried to humiliate her. The clerk had tried to diminish her. The police had followed procedure without questioning bias. Yet in the end, the truth prevailed. Naomi Carter wasn't just the woman accused of theft. She was the woman who held the keys to justice. The woman who reminded the world that no one, not status, not color, not position, has the right to strip dignity from another human being. And for those who had watched, shared, and felt the weight of this story, the lesson was undeniable. Change is possible. Courage can rewrite the narrative. And even in the most humiliating moments, power can quietly gather, waiting for the right time to emerge. Naomi's story was not just a story. It was a call to action, a reminder of the power each individual holds to shape a more just and inclusive world. The story of Naomi Carter isn't just about a dress. It's about every time someone has been judged, accused, or dismissed for who they are rather than what they do. It's about the moments when society whispers or shouts that certain people don't belong, and it's about the courage it takes to say, no, this is not okay. Naomi's experience reminds us that dignity isn't a luxury, it's a human right. Every person, in every boutique, every office, every school deserves to be seen, respected, and treated fairly. Even when the world thinks they're powerless, even when the odds seem impossible, she turned humiliation into empowerment. She transformed injustice into action. Naomi's story is a testament to the transformative power of courage and resilience. She took a moment that could have crushed her and turned it into a lesson the entire industry and everyone watching could learn from. The power of her story comes not from fame or clicks. It comes from truth. The truth is that discrimination is real, pervasive, and harmful. The truth that silence enables it. And the truth is that speaking up, even when it's scary, can create ripples far bigger than anyone could imagine. Think about the clerk who accused Naomi. She believed her authority, her assumptions, and her prejudices gave her the right to shame someone. But when faced with accountability, everything shifted. This isn't just a tale about one boutique. It's a cautionary reminder. Actions rooted in bias and judgment have consequences. And those consequences can be public, transformative, and undeniable. Now imagine this scenario in your own life. What if the person being accused is someone you know? What if you are that person? What if the injustice happens in your workplace, your school, your community? Would you stay silent? Or would you find your voice even when it shakes? Even when fear threatens to hold you down? Naomi's story teaches us that courage isn't loud. Sometimes it's quiet resolve, a plan executed with patience, a truth told with conviction. And in those small but deliberate acts, change begins. Each action, no matter how seemingly insignificant, has the potential to create a ripple effect that can lead to significant change. The impact doesn't stop with Naomi. Her story sparked conversations across social media, in offices, in classrooms, in boutiques everywhere. People began to question the assumptions they had always taken for granted. Policies started to be rewritten, training programs updated, awareness raised. One person's courage can inspire thousands. And when these individual acts of courage unite, they can dismantle an entire pattern of unfairness, sparking a collective movement for justice and equality. One stand against injustice can dismantle an entire pattern of unfairness. One act of reclaiming dignity can remind the world that those at the top don't just hold power, it's also in the hands of those brave enough to act. As you reflect on Naomi Carter's experience, remember this: injustice thrives in silence. Bias persists when we accept it. Dignity is most potent when we defend it. So, what if this happened to you? What if it happened in your school, your workplace, your community? Would you stay quiet? Or would you, like Naomi, gather courage, plan carefully, and reclaim what's rightfully yours? The world Naomi faced tried to define her by assumption and stereotype, but she refused. She didn't just walk out of a boutique, she walked into history. And in doing so, she reminded everyone watching that power, dignity, and justice are never given. They are claimed. And that is the ultimate lesson of the designer dress she stole. Even in the face of false accusations, humiliation, or systemic injustice, one person's voice can ignite change. One act of courage can have a lasting impact far beyond what we see. And one decision, to act, to speak, to stand, can transform not only a single moment, but the entire world watching.